Conservative. Constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
And welcome, everybody, to another amazing day right here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before I start out, I do want to make a couple of announcements. We are getting close to Election Day, just 1 week out. So I want to encourage everybody out there, no matter who you support, no matter who your favorite candidates are, get out there and support them. Knock doors for them, write mail, make phone calls, text for them, anything you can do to help them. Get off your butts, make your voices heard. And if you don't know who to support or you need some guidance in doing so, well, I invite you to join me as I support some of my favorite candidates. I don't just talk the talk, I literally walk the walk, because I'll be out there walking and hitting doors. This Saturday, I'll be down in Bowling Green hitting doors for Kelsey Rock, and then this Sunday, I will be knocking doors for Thomas Jefferson. So I encourage you, who's running against Killian Timney here in Central Kentucky area. So I encourage you, if you don't have your own favorite candidates to hit, you want to learn how to knock doors, you like these candidates, you can join me. We'll hit some doors together. Or you can go out there and support your own candidates that you like the best, whoever that may be. You may not like my favorite ones. That's okay. That's okay. I don't blame you for doing so. I'm honest, I hope, about my viewpoints, my biases. So hopefully you can decide to go out there and hit doors for your own candidates. And maybe you don't like those ones and you want to go out there and knock against them. Well, get out there and do it. As long as you're getting your tuckuses out there and hitting the doors. Because if you don't get involved, well, you don't deserve to complain. You haven't earned that right. So get out there and get involved. Now, yesterday on the Andrew Cooperrider Show, I laid out the battle lines, the concerns we're seeing coming into this here primary election year. I then dug into how the establishment has overreached themselves and are getting desperate as their own actions have turned this into a make or break year for them. And as I laid out yesterday, I covered the political sides, the political interests, how they have three concerns in order to move forward their policy goals. And that is in order, from least or most important to least important, they want to make sure they protect their own people. They want to win open seats and they want to take out the other side of the issues, guys. And we took a look at what lengths they're going to in order to protect their people. And oh, golly gee, does it look awfully desperate. And they have decided that they're going to go ahead, they're going to step out there, they're going to defend people that maybe they shouldn't have done so in the first place. Maybe they should have abandoned. Maybe they should have left behind and said basically to the rest of the caucus, look, vote with us, you're good, but don't go rogue. Don't go out there going crazy. We can't defend you. No, instead, they've decided they're going to dump everything they have into a lot of races this year and not just protecting their people. No, they're going to instead also try to go after and take down some of the other side's people. This despite, and as evidence of abandoning a race, if we take a look at the 45th House District where Timney is running against Thomas Jefferson, you see them dumping over $200 a voter in that race. And for comparison, you have Kelly Craft, you may remember, billionaire, big spender in the governor's primary. She spent less than $100 a voter. That's not per vote they get, that's per voter that's turning out. Per vote they get, Killian Timney's probably going to spend close to around $400 a voter. Absolutely astronomical. And the reason why I point that out is because they're spending so much that even if they win, if they don't just blow it out in races like that, it will be seen as a loss because people will look around and say, woo, that was one expensive race and you did not do that great. You maybe won, but not by a lot. And they're going to see the cost that went into keeping just that one guy, see how high it is and say, look, you can't repeat that year after year. You're not going to be able to do that to everyone. Maybe it's best if maybe I'd be a little bit more careful about voting your way. And by close, I mean, if it's even close to 45 to 55-ish in that Killian Timney versus Thomas Jefferson race, or even closer, well, the rest of the side is going to say, look, if we continue following this liberal establishment path, the cost may be high. Now, that's the carrots, though. Hey, we'll protect you, we promise, even if maybe it doesn't look like they can do a super great job, or they're trying to protect people that maybe they should have said, look, he's not with us, a little crazy. But that's the carrots. What about the sticks, right? The beatings you get. Well, We'll go over how if they had not even bothered to try and beat some of these incumbents that they're trying to attack, that they're trying to show what the stick is to, they would have been, once again, maybe better off in the eyes of actually getting things done, getting their policy goals done within the caucus, within the Republican House caucus, as they are spending a fair amount, but they're backing so many bad candidates that it's blowing up in their faces. But first, as I mentioned, the middle concern is winning open seats. And there's one open seat that they are going after with extreme vigor, and they really probably shouldn't have. Now, the reason why winning open seats takes precedent over beating the other guys is because these generally are easier to win. Neither person has a voting record, and they can make whatever wild and lying claims they want to about what they're going to do in office, and there's no real exact way to call them on that. And they can lie. So the only people who know how they're really going to vote is, well, them. Plus, once a person is in office, it's massively harder. It's significantly harder to take them down. But an open seat, well, if you can get your guy to win, they'll credit you for their victory. They will most likely stay loyal to you because you've bought it from them. So going forward, they'll vote the way you want to. However, the establishment decided that instead of using the advantages of an open seat primary to rack up what should have been an easier win, find a candidate with more broader appeal that will play ball with them, that can lie about what they're going to do and misrepresent, but, is just an open shill for them. Maybe just a run-of-the-mill establishment voter that's going to do exactly as they're told. Maybe just get one of those in there. No, they decided they didn't want that more broader appeal. No, what they're going to do is they're going to go ahead and get behind Ed Massey. Now, real quick, let me explain why this is just absolutely a boneheaded move. So as an incumbent in 2022, Ed Massey lost, and badly. And it wasn't that he was underfunded. He was up against Steve Rawlings, who raised $15,000 personally, then had maybe another $40,000 in outside help, mainly Make Liberty Win coming in and knocking doors for him, helping cover the district. And for Ed Massey, he was definitely not, by any stretch of the imagination, underfunded. I mean, he had $116,000 he raised personally. He had $10,000 kicked in from the Chamber of Commerce, $40,000 in other independent expenditures. The House Republican Caucus Campaign Committee threw in money. So, north of $200,000 easy was dumped to make Ed Massey win. But instead of pulling off what should have been a simple victory, an incumbent, well-funded, he ended up losing 70-30 to Steve Rawlings, who was maybe at a fifth of the amount of money he did spend on him. So you have a person who's already lost as a well-funded incumbent. And the reason why he lost was because he had just an awful voting record for gas tax, against parents' rights, pushing more of giving the schools what they want. That's why the teachers union's backing him so much out of Louisville. It's just awful track record. That's why he lost. So what does the establishment do come 2024? Do they go out and find a new candidate to back? No. Tell Ed Massey, you know what, look, you're on your own here. We're going to go focus on other open seats that we could pull off. Nope. Of course not. They decide they want to risk it all again and show very possibly what will be an incredibly incompetent move. Do something that is just extremely stupid. They decide they are once again going to spend $200,000 to $300,000 on Ed Massey, and this time his opponent isn't Steve Rawlings, but is TJ Roberts, who's actually better funded than Rawlings was. He has the same amount of outside support as Rawlings gets, but TJ Roberts also has raised $60,000 himself. So Ed Massey, not an incumbent, up against twice as much funding as last time. And the establishment here, they should have just walked away, but instead they decide to risk making fools of themselves, making themselves look ineffective and inefficient. And instead you have people like Stivers, House leadership, throwing in behind Ed Massey. And a loss here just makes you look weak. Makes you look weak. Makes it clear that your power isn't all that great. And honestly, this is a race that they should be afraid of losing, because it is not looking good for Ed Massey. But that's winning open seats. What about attacking? Well, we'll be covering that after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before the break, I was going over the establishment, the rhinos, Republicans in name only, the uniparty, the corporate and special interests, whatever you want to call them, how they are going out over their skis. Yesterday, I talked about how they were going out over their skis trying to defend. Some people, maybe they shouldn't be, going out over their skis, getting involved in open seat races with horrible candidates that they shouldn't. But that's all carrots. Now let's talk about sticks. What about on the attack side? Who are they going after to punish for not following with them, to show them the error of their ways, to tell the rest of the caucus, you fall in line or you're going to get the same treatment they're getting. But in order for that to work, in order for a stick to be dangerous, it actually has to hurt when you're whacked with it. And it has to show that that stick can take down somebody. So, with the issues they have protecting their own, you would think, issues I illustrated yesterday, the smart play here would maybe be to keep your powder a little dry. Make it clear that even the worst amongst your corporate and special interest champions can survive, and you'll dump all that cash to demoralize the other side. So maybe next election, 2026, you can launch a full-scale attack. Just kind of defend, feel them out, launch an attack. Well, they decided they didn't want to do that at all. Instead, they decided to go ahead and challenge several incumbents, liberty conservative incumbents, the anti-establishment people. And those we're going to talk about today is Felicia Rayburn in the 47th District, Steve Doan in the 69th, Candy Massaroni in the 50th, Marion Proctor in the 60th, and Bill Wesley in the 91st District. And their choices of who to dump money into, why they're picking these races. There's a few key reasons why. So first, let's go over Felicia Rayburn. She's in the 47th District. Why are they picking her out? Well, Felicia has been a little more quiet historically on the conservative liberty issues. Voting well. Her votes have been fantastic, right in line, right where you want them to be. But she's a little bit quieter on the vocal side. And because she's quieter, she doesn't necessarily attract as much obvious monetary and grassroots support. And her and Savannah Maddox are close friends. And I personally think that with some encouragement from Savannah over the past years, and also just becoming more comfortable in the role, Felicia has gotten a little bit more louder. So they look at this as an opportunity that we haven't had a flower fully blossom yet, so let's stomp on it before it becomes another Savannah Maddox. Now, Felicia, unlike Savannah, they would like probably to more go directly at Savannah Maddox, a fully flushed, fully bloomed a liberty figure, Republican conservative figure here in Kentucky. But Felicia Rayburn, unlike Savannah, doesn't have as large of a donor network because Savannah just ran for governor and did a lot to raise money into her House race as well. So the establishment special interests, maybe they want to get Savannah, but it's a little more difficult. But we think since Felicia Rayburn, who's right next to her district, good friends with Savannah, she's a little quieter, maybe we can take her out instead. And maybe that will be what puts Savannah Maddox on notice. Maybe that will tell Savannah to shut up. And plus, we get rid of Felicia Rayburn, who is getting louder. We don't like that, right? She was especially loud on things like the rules fight this next year. And also, we already hate her vote. So maybe this is definitely something we want to do. So they go out looking for candidates. And they're like, who can we find to run against Felicia Rayburn? A fresh face, right? That's who you think you'd want. Someone who maybe is a really strong candidate, good business backing, well-known in the community, but also is fresh and new. Someone without a lot of baggage, not a lot of attack lines on. You think that's who they would go after, but no, once again, the establishment decided to try and find the worst person they could find in the district. In this case, they have Mark Gilkinson. Gilkison? Gilkison. Gilkinson. We'll go with that. Mark. We'll call him Mark. Why is Mark maybe not the best candidate from just a sheer political side for taking on an incumbent? Well, maybe it's because Mark, once again, the same as the last race I covered before the break, has lost this election before. For those keeping track at home, that's two candidates they have lost seats before that they're backing now. Now, Mark lost this specific seat in 2018, losing to a Democrat 54-45, but then 2 years later, 2020, Felicia Rayburn runs, beats Robert Foray in the primary, which is important to point out that she beat Robert Foray in the primary because that means Felicia Rayburn has run in a primary before. See, old Gilkinson, Mark, didn't have a primary. So not only did Mark not run a primary before, giving Felicia a leg up, but also Mark already lost in a general on this same race, 54-45. But Felicia runs 2 years later and beats the Democrat with 70% of the vote, beats that Democrat like a redheaded stepchild, picking up a full 25% more than old Gilkinson did. Old Marky Mark. So they go out there and they decide they're going to go ahead and back and find a guy who's already lost the race and performed significantly worse than Rayburn did in the exact same district. Like, a lot worse. They say, oh, you know what? I want to back this guy. This guy's the winner. And I'm saying, look, anything's possible. It's very possible that he beats Felicia. Felicia loses to him. But I'm just talking about what's playing through the minds of the primary voters. They're thinking to themselves, this guy has already lost this seat from a Democrat before. Felicia was the one who got it for us as Republicans in the first place. On top of that, she has a strong voting record. And so in 2022, because she's gained more support from her district, in the general, she gained another 2 percentage points in her win, going up above 70%. So it's clear that her district is backing her even more. So with all this, you'd think they might look at it and say, look, this is a little more difficult here if we swing and miss. Well, look bad. Look bad. Now, if you just happen to have the money to burn, and they do to a degree, the smart move might be to just harass some of these candidates a little bit, make them work a little bit, soften them up for a better, stronger candidate in 2 years near you. You know, fund a guy to the tune of like maybe 30,000, push a bit, feel a bit, run some surveys, see where you find some mush, what is working, what is playing, and then get ready to rock come 2026. Go out there full blow to take them down. That would be maybe the smart move. That would be something they could be doing in many races across the state. Instead of targeting just these few, they could take their money and be targeting many races across the state and just seeing where they can feel that mush. That would be the smart move, I think. Because look, if you take a big swing and you whiff, and you're nowhere near the vicinity of having beat somebody, well, you look like, it's the difference between looking like an MLB player and a toddler playing t-ball, taking a big swing and missing, right? And so instead of taking a small swing, bunting, feeling out the defense here, instead they decide they're going to fund Gilkinson to the tune of $160,000 total, probably right at $200K-ish, maybe in total spending in this race. And I think this is a total mistake. Later on this week, I'll be sitting down discussing this race with some people, so I won't go too much more in depth on why I think Rayburn will win this. But I'll say this. It is once again not impossible that Gilkinson wins. But man, they're taking some unnecessary risk here on a lackluster candidate to challenge an incumbent. While we're talking about people running in elections that they've already lost, we got a hit on District 91 here, where we got Bill Wesley being challenged by Daryl Billings. Now, I did a whole episode on why they are targeting Bill Wesley, called What's Going On in House District 91. You can go back and listen to that. Head on over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. Hit the Listen Now tab, and you can see all the places where you can listen to old episodes, and you can go back and listen to What's Going On in House District 91. So I'm not going to go into high depths on why he's being challenged, but I just want to point this out here that Daryl Billings has already ran this race before. Not to mention he's a former Democrat. So they go out and they get Daryl Billings, a former Democrat, who tried to run as a Republican 2 years ago, spent $70K or so against Bill Wesley's $40,000, and Daryl Billings lost 63-37. So less than 40% of the vote he got. So it's saying, well, this race happened with this guy already. A lot of people spoke on him. They've already got some thoughts in their mind about what they want to do here. Maybe we should look for a different candidate. What do? No. More cowbell. They decide they're going to go ahead and drop $70K behind a loser Billings. and outside funding, and then $80K Billings is raised directly to the campaign. They say, you know what? He lost last time. Let's go ahead. Let's double it. Let's double it. Now, it's once again possible that Daryl wins, and perhaps Daryl's support has more to do with Billings, Daryl Billings himself, than it does with Bill Wesley, as Daryl Billings has many political connections to give him money as a former Democrat and agent for the Uniparty, but still, they couldn't find anybody else better. So for those keeping track at home, that is 3 out of 6 of the races we're going to cover here today, where the Republican leadership, the Uniparty, the anti-conservatives, the rhinos, whatever you want to call them, have backed losers. Not like figuratively, like literally, these are people, Ed Massey, Mark Gilkinson, and Daryl Billings. All of them have literally been beaten in the races they're running in before. And instead of going out and finding people, you're like, let's get some people who already lost. That's the winner. You see, that's why I'm dubious of their ability to actually connect here on the swings they are taking. And these are some big, big swings. And they did everything they could to find the worst people they could to make sure it was stacked against them. Well, after this break, we're going to move on from the more traditional losers crowd and take a look at some of these other races that maybe have some more figuratively losers in them. We'll have that after this short break. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Today we've been covering races that the establishment, Uniparty, rhinos, leadership, McConnellites, whatever term, call them whatever, where they are going after the strong conservative constitutional liberty Republicans, populist, whatever you want to call them, MAGA crowd, some people would call some of these people, especially those who don't understand the nuances. Whatever you want to call them. They're going after the establishment is going after the anti-establishment, and we've been going over places where they're on the attack. So we've talked about places where they're trying to defend from the anti-establishment. We've talked about a race they're trying to win an open seat, where they're making mistakes in those places. Now we're talking about attacks where they're making mistakes. They're just really not that good at this. And I'll go over why at the end I think that is. But we talked about some prior candidates who are just losers. I'm not saying that to be mean. They literally have lost the races they're running in before, that for some reason they're backing again. But now going on to these other people, we have Diane Brown challenging Steve Doan in the 69th District. Now, let me remind everyone here that Steve Doan is a very effective campaigner in the district. 2 years ago, he beat Adam Koenig, who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars as an incumbent. Meanwhile, Doan spent like 60, 70K, and he won by 8 points. So you'd figure they would need to really get a ringer and really get somebody that they could really dump some dough into and would be a really solid candidate for them, right? Well, you'd be wrong. That isn't what they did. Instead, they dropped like $90,000 behind an individual that can't fundraise herself, at all. She has raised $5,000 into her campaign, total. And that means she's just not really a part of her community or the political scene there at all. I'm not going to pretend that you need to raise a lot. I'm not going to pretend not trying to dog her for not being a super well-funded candidate per se. But even strong conservative candidates have no rich friends at all. Will raise $50,000 to $20,000 normally. But now nope. She literally can't pay her own bills even. She had her law license suspended because she couldn't pay the bar fee. I'm not trying to say, people don't struggle at times. I've struggled in my life too. And I'm also not saying we should only elect super duper wealthy people. And having a person who's of the people, by the people is great. But I'm just saying here, has anyone ever heard of a poor attorney before? I haven't. And she just isn't a good campaigner. Check out. She sent out this mailer attacking Doan there in northern Kentucky. And it's clear she did it herself, at least. I don't know exactly who put this together, but they did not do a super great job. So she sends out a mailer going after Doan into the district that says, we can't trust Steve Doan to be our voice in the Frankfurt. He voted no. He didn't. They didn't say no. I'm adding he because it makes more grammatical sense. They just put a dash and said voted no on requiring civics education in Kentucky classrooms. Now, that would be awful if that was true, but that isn't a very strong attack. That just isn't, and that's your first one. Off the bat, not very strong. Voted no on improved school bus safety. Voted no on funding for education and law enforcement. Voted no, and that's where she's citing, of course, the budget bill, and I mentioned this at the time when I was talking about the budget bill, that the budget was awful. It was sending us billions of dollars more into debt. They're spending more money than they've ever spent before. They're spending like it's going out of style here, taking on new debt as a state. And, of course, you vote against, though, that budget bill that's 300 pages long. There's things in it like education and law enforcement, but you're going to vote no on it because it's full of other stuff. But that's going to open you up for a tax, and that's what she's doing. So what she's implying is she would have voted for a budget that puts us billions of dollars more into debt and is spending more money than Kentucky's ever spent before by like a long shot. Voted no on punishing people who torture animals. I've covered this bill at length on this show. That isn't quite accurate to what the bill exactly did, but anyways. Those are the big attacks that lead off with. Not exactly very great. And then underneath that, they say Steve can change his name, but his sad record remains the same. Which was an attempt at a rhyme, but it doesn't make... I don't understand what she's hitting on. And so I asked some people in the district, I asked about this, and I guess that Steven is the name he has on the ballot. And so he changed his signs to say Steven instead of Steve Doan. It says Steven Doan because that's what it says on the ballot. So she's saying that he went by Steve 2 years ago, but now he's going by Steven. So that's just changing his name. That's what she's trying to hit him on for going by Steven instead of Steve. Anyways, she then continues on her attack. He took an appointment to a seat on Erlanger Council and almost immediately started running for the House. He allegedly got tax breaks for having his office at his home while practicing law in a plush Covington high-rise. The minute you throw allegedly in it, I could literally say anything. As long as somebody at some point said that to me, I could say, allegedly speaking, he, got a tax break. Or allegedly Diane Brown is, receiving billions of dollars from the Illuminati to attack Steve Doan. I could make that claim, and as long as somebody said it to me, I could say allegedly. Also, it's not a very good attack to attack somebody for literally taking a tax break. I think we all agree, especially conservatives, that any dollar you can stop from giving to the IRS would be fantastic. She also doesn't cite her source there. Says he skipped votes on the House floor to come home for his fundraiser and got paid anyway. The House normally adjourns at a particular time, and he doesn't live that far away from Frankfurt, so that's kind of an odd claim. She doesn't provide a source there. Then follows up by saying he lost respect of his colleagues and was stripped of his committee assignments, citing the fact that he was removed off his committee assignments. Why? Because he stood against leadership. And so you're attacking somebody for standing against the establishment and fighting against the establishment, and your attack is, that's bad, that's awful, he lost their respect. I will do what the establishment tells me to do. That's what I'm saying. Awful, awful attacks. And then on the other side, she has her positive side of things, which is all relatively dumb. But one I want to point out, in a cursive that's kind of hard to read font, she says, as the proud mother of an Eagle Scout, I will do all I can to ensure the next generation has the tools they need to compete in a global economy. As a proud mother of an Eagle Scout, I'm not saying anything bad about Eagle Scouts per se. Obviously, Boy Scouts has gone very woke, right? But what does a proud mother of an Eagle Scout have to do with anything? I'm not here to downplay what an Eagle Scout is. That's difficult to achieve. It is an achievement. But it's like saying, as the proud mother of a college graduate, as the proud mother of a doctor, as the proud mother of an honor roll student. It doesn't purvey an exactly... It's an accomplishment, a big one for that child, but that isn't exactly a great reason to vote for somebody. And look, I'm not here saying it's impossible she wins by calling it now. She isn't winning. Doan has only become more popular in his district, and I don't even understand why these people decide to waste 80 grand here. It's better not to swing at all than to do these kinds of things and just look foolish. Now, the reason why they're going after Doan is because he does directly fight those special interests, and he went against leadership. He also went against Cooperrider, which you'll remember from yesterday. I mentioned they gave $25,000 to these PACs to get involved in these specific races because he stood against their corporate interests. The gaming industry hates Steve because he doesn't like them having a monopoly like they do. The horse tracks here in Kentucky. He doesn't like hospital monopolies either. He generally doesn't like government-enforced monopolies, and the corporate interests don't like that, so they're going to go after him. They're going to attack him. And coming up after this, we're going to talk about District 60 race. We'll have that after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show, your source for Kentucky politics. If you want to reach out to the show, feel free to email info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. You can also head on over to theandrewshow.com and click that contact tab. After this break, we'll be going over Marion Proctor's race. We'll have that. We'll see you back here in a few short minutes. And you're back here in this final segment of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So I want to dig in now to House District 60, where you have Christopher Pavese. I think it's Pavese. I think it's Italian. Pavese. Anyways, Christopher is trying to take on Marion Proctor. Now, why is Proctor getting targeted? Well, one big issue for Proctor, who has been a very standing tall fighter on this, is she has been the main pusher against certificate of need laws here in Kentucky. She's been the main sponsor of anti-con laws. And obviously, the hospitals, they want to take her down. They want to show that you do not mess with our monopolies. Now, of course, remember, they're trying to defend now Kim Mosier in Northern Kentucky, who has been a major champion for pro-con laws, but they got issues there, as I think they didn't figure they would from Karen Campbell taking a big chunk out of Kim Mosier, something Kim Mosier seems bothered by. Apparently, anytime you see her, it looks like somebody stepped on her puppy. So I think that's caught them and her off guard. But they've dumped $70,000 into Christopher Pavese, and Pavese has raised another $40,000 on top of it. So why is this a dumb race for them to have even taken on? Well, outside of the fact Marion Proctor's very well liked, let's rewind to 2 years ago. Sal Santoro held that seat, a long-time incumbent who'd spent $150,000 himself, plus outside money came in, meaning he spent closer to $250,000 trying to hold on to that seat. And that was spent against Marion Proctor, who raised like $16,000, had maybe another $40,000 in outside spending, so $56,000. And she beat Sal Santoro by 3 percentage points. But since then, as I said, she's only gotten more popular in the district. And the district has begun to understand certificate of need a whole lot more. And because of her advocacy on con laws, fighting against them, she has earned a powerful ally. You see, AFP, Americans for Prosperity, is dead set on removing con laws in Kentucky. And they have some very deep pockets. Now, of course, they are also backed by hospitals. But the difference here, these are the hospitals that want to come into Kentucky, but are being blocked by our certificate of need laws. So they have a financial interest. That's why they're dumping their money. But it just so happens that their concerns and ours align. We want the competition in the marketplace to drive down prices, and they want to be able to enter the marketplace to make more money. So you have Marion Proctor, who even against an incumbent with massive spending advantage won. Now she's the incumbent with the incumbent advantage who has a good voting record. And not only has she done herself favors and her support has only grown, obvious from the fact that she's brought in $40,000 this time around instead of $16,000, but also Americans for Prosperity with their deep pockets, they're stepping in. And so for the first thing for a political group, and the reason why they're stepping up so much is because you got to protect your champions. They're kicking in $50K here. So you have an incumbent that's a proven effective campaigner, only gone up in popularity since in office because she followed through on promises, who has almost doubled what they've raised a year ago, and is now getting even more outside help. So you'd think that they're taking a big swing at $100,000, but that's still half of what she went up against, less than half of what she went up against when she first ran the seat in the first place. And so it's so much money that it certainly looks like you're shooting your shot. You're trying to show people what the stick can do, but you're still spending too little to even drag Chris along to victory. But when you're taking on an incumbent, you should really want to cast a vision. You need substance as a challenger. This was why Cameron lost versus Beshear. And I know exactly what I get with Proctor. She has a voting record. And so if let's say I agree with 95% of how she votes, are you going to give me 96 or are you going to give me 94? Are you going to give me less? 50? But to illustrate my point about the lack of depth, let me read you one of his candidate surveys. This is coming from Ballotpedia, so he filled this out. When you're taking on an incumbent, you need to draw a clear distinction. You need to say, here is specifically what I would do differently. Here is how I shine. So let's go through this candidate survey. So first they ask, who are you? Tell us about yourself. He says, Christopher Pavese, I don't know, was born in Oakland, California. Pavese earned a bachelor's degree from Gonzaga University in 2007 and a master's degree in organizational leadership. That sounds made up. That's not a real thing. Is that a real thing? Is that like an MBA? Organizational leadership? What a weird thing to get a degree in. Anyways, and electrical power transmission and distribution from Gonzaga University in 2010. His career experience includes 33 years in the electrical field from the U.S. Navy to retiring from Duke Energy. Pavese has been affiliated with Boone County JCs, St. Timothy Catholic Church, Kentucky Society of Professional Engineers, and Pilots and Paws. It's Pilots and Paws. Is that teaching dogs how to fly planes? I'm sure it's a fantastic... What is Pilots and Paws? Saving the lives of innocent animals. Well, that sounds good. So it is not... Okay. It is flying animals to save their lives. It is not teaching animals to fly planes. So I want to make sure everybody's clear on that. Fine. That's fantastic. Tell us about yourself. You gave us some background, your experience. Sound like a well-rounded, educated guy. And if you had good policy beliefs and you had good, strong, conservative beliefs and you can show me that, maybe we're prejudging this guy, right? He's going up against Marion Proctor. So I'm looking for depth. So let's look on to some questions about his depth. Please list below 3 key messages of your campaign. What are the main points you want voters to remember about the goals for your time in office? So remember, this is supposed to be, what are your goals for an office? This was his 3 things. You ready? Proud U.S. Navy veteran, loving husband and father, humble servant leader. He answered this himself. It wasn't them pulling this. He answered this. So they asked him, what are your goals for office? And he responded with, proud U.S. Navy veteran, loving husband and father, humble servant leader. They're asking about what you want to do in office. I got that. I read that earlier. I got it. Good and great. But please tell us, what are your main points you want voters to remember about your goals? And he said, I'm a veteran. I'm a husband and father, humble servant leader. What are you going to do, though? What areas of public policy are you personally passionate about? He says taxes, jobs, crimes, veterans, and values. That's it. Nothing a whole lot. Taxes? What about taxes? You want to raise them? You want to lower them? I don't know. Jobs? You hate jobs? You love jobs? Crime? You want more criminals, less criminals? How do you want to address crime? Because Democrats say we should address crime by dumping tons of money into things like, social services for underserved communities. Republicans say we should address crime by arresting lawbreakers and trying to solve crimes. Which is it? You could say you're passionate about crime, and you could mean either way. That doesn't give us a lot here. Let's see. What characteristics or principles are most important for an elected official? It says that genuine integrity to represent the greater good of all mankind. I don't like that at all. The greater good of all mankind? Who's saying what the greater good is of all mankind? Who's deciding the greater good? You haven't told us what that policy looks like. And I have no idea who's deciding what the greater good here is. Because you know what? Anthony Fauci and all the Democrats locked us down saying it was for the greater good. Is that what you're for? I don't know. Here's another good one. What do you perceive to be your state's greatest challenges over the next decade? So what issues do you think are coming up in Kentucky that you really need to deal with? How did Chris respond? Preparing for the future. You want me to vote for you? What are you worried about in the future? I'm worried about being ready for the future. Yeah, we know. Duh. But what challenges do you think will come up in the future be prepared for? Well, we need to be really prepared for the future. Here's another one. Do you believe it's beneficial for state legislators to have previous experience in government or politics? That was the question. Simple, straightforward. He says, it's vitally important for our leaders to have proven leadership experience. Didn't answer yes or no. Is there a particular legislator, past or present, whom you want to model yourself after? He said, with so many greats from George Washington to Abraham Lincoln to Ronald Reagan, how can I choose but one to mold myself after, but rather a bit of each? They asked, are you interested in running for a different political office in the future? He said, each of our future opportunities are endless. We are only limited to what we can imagine. I'll tell you this much. You know what, Chris? You know what? I said he's not a super great politician. I lied. He's a fantastic politician. He's really great about not answering the question he's being asked. What are the key policy goals of your campaign? I'm a veteran. Is leadership experience in government important? Leadership is a good experience. What are the biggest problems we should solve over the next decade? I think we should be preparing for the future. This one's hilarious. Both sitting legislators and candidates for office hear many personal stories from the residents of their district. Is there a story that you've heard that you found particularly touching, memorable, or impactful? He said the impacts our infrastructure has had on the personal lives of our district residents. They ask you for a specific story, and you're like, bridges. Bridges are a specific story. This is what they got. This is the greatest. We'll be going over Andy Stone versus Candy Massaroni, as well as finishing up this discussion tomorrow. We'll also have on a interview tomorrow with Kelsey Rock. So please join us tomorrow, 9 a.m. WZXI, 1 o'clock everywhere else. Have a great rest of your day.